Hi, my name is Lana. Welcome to my YouTube channel. And on this channel, I sit down and mainly review books. So if you like singular book reviews, book reviews, what am I trying to say? If you like videos where it's just one video dedicated to one book, I'm your girl. Go ahead on and like and subscribe because today we are talking about The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck, the All-American. This book, we got a lot to talk about, you guys. Use guys' let's hop into it. I'm thirsty. I need water. It's all the way over there. All right, let's open up with a quote. That's what makes it ours. Being born on it, working it, dying on it. That makes ownership, not a paper with numbers on it. The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck is a classic that is well known and well loved. And it is, I think, definitely probably considered one of the top American classics. Doesn't get much more American than this book, I'm telling you. All right, we're going to get into why. I mean, it's just America. The Grapes of Wrath tells the story of the Joad family. They are natives of Oklahoma, a state I have never been to. However, they are being forced from their home and their land as big business and the government start buying up farmland. The Joads pack up their family members and they pack up their few belongings and head to California, hoping to set up a better life. As their home is being destroyed, literally bulldozed. However, there's a hair here going up my nose. However, the journey results in turmoil, and as can be expected with Steinbeck, there's nothing about Steinbeck when you pick up a novel that you're expecting to feel cuddly and warm. If you're going to pick up a novel by this guy, he's going to hurt your feelings. Okay, so yeah, there's nothing happy about this book. But that's what also makes it so great. So yes, you can expect all the turmoil. And he uses this particular book to highlight the disparities between the common people and powerful entities. I bet he read this with one of my good friends. And this, as follows, is what we decided to highlight when it comes to this book. Okay, as you can see, quite a lot of annotations here. I am so thirsty. My chest's starting to hurt. You know when you get so thirsty, you start to get into a little bit of pain? That's where I'm heading. So, from the very first chapter, Steinbeck overemphasizes the importance of the family unit, and he draws the distinctions early on between men and women in the family. Women and children knew deep in themselves that no misfortune was too great to bear if their men were whole. She seemed to know that if she swayed, the family shook, and if she ever really deeply wavered or despaired, the family would fall. The family will to function would be gone. The female characters in this book, especially Mrs. Joad, they're the strongest characters in this narrative. And Mrs. Joad in particular, the matriarch, is the backbone of the whole family. As the Joad situation becomes more and more dire as they're heading from Oklahoma to California, and then when they get to California, the men in the family start to fall apart. And yet, Mrs. Joad refuses to give in to despair. She's not unfeeling. She's not callous. She's not hard. And she is extremely worried about her family situation. But she knows her role. And she knows that somebody has to stand their ground. Someone has to choose, sometimes beyond reason, to look for something optimistic to happen. And that is her. They are poor. They weren't super well off before they had to move. But they are now at this point, when they leave Oklahoma, beyond poor. They can't find employment that is sustainable when they get to California. They need food. They're constantly hungry. Their clothes are wearing thin. They have all this hair that's doing like this. But she still makes the most out of whatever they have. And Mr. Joad, her husband, he starts to give in. He starts to lose hope. He's starting to just wilt and despair. She refuses to let go. Steinbeck is really making an interesting case for the importance of strong women in the family unit. Another interesting female character, Mrs. Joad's daughter, Rose of Sharon. What a name. Rose of Sharon is how it's spelled, but Rose of Sharon. She's the eldest Joad daughter. And throughout the majority of the book, she's the weakest character. And by weak, I mean she cries easily. She wants to give up. She pouts a lot. And not saying that she's wrong, that her feeling that she doesn't have a point with what she's upset about certain things, but it's like her and her mother are constantly going back and forth, where Rosa Sharon wants to give into her feelings and just kind of collapse, and her mother's like, no, pull yourself together. You have to get over yourself. Pull yourself together. And there are times where her mother seems kind of cruel in this way, but she's, again, teaching her daughter, you have to learn to have a backbone, because who else will? Nobody. It's the role of the mother to never collapse under the weight of whatever it is the family is dealing with. So, however, this character, without spoiling anything, Rose of Sharon, has the biggest turnarounds by the end of the book. And that ending, man, lives in your head rent free. How my friend and I viewed what happened to her character by the end, again, Steinbeck is showing the importance of the matriarch in the family. And this character, Rose of Sharon, she comes into that role. She makes a decision. And you can see she's like, you know what? Maybe it was her coming of age moment in a moment. Even though she's really a young adult, that was her coming into herself. That was her coming into that role as the matriarch, the next matriarch of the family. And she rises to the task. Very well done. The symbolism was, Steinbeck is a genius, okay? So also, I gotta get something to drink. My throat's dry. I've been talking for the past hour. 1 second. Please hold. Just knocked over all my pins. Okay. I have quenched my thirst. Let's talk about the next thing that Rebecca and I focused on. The role of religion in this book. Got a burp. There it was. We focus on the role that religion in the concept that sin and virtue, the role that they take in this particular narrative. Still burping. There is an ex-pastor named Casey in this story he's a family friend of the Joads, and he's constantly discussing his ideas, how his ideas on the concept of sin and virtue have changed throughout his life, and why he considers himself an ex-pastor. However, even though he says he's no longer a pastor, he no longer really believes in sin, he no longer believes in virtue, or maybe objective virtue or whatever, he can't seem to separate himself from his spirituality. And he's always being asked to pray when some certain things happen, and that is part of his identity. He can't, it's part of his essence. And so why does Steinbeck choose to do this? There ain't no sin and there ain't no virtue. But that's as any man got a right to say. I don't have an Oklahoma accent, okay? But bear with me. This mindset, in the context of the grapes of wrath, makes perfect sense. How does one hold on to one's faith in the midst of disillusionment and depression, especially when the wrongs that are being committed are being committed by the powerful against the helpless? Steinbeck, as we saw it, is using this internal tension that's happening in Casey, who does have faith and does believe in God, to symbolize how people are becoming increasingly disillusioned by the system. And this is going to segue nicely into what that system is. Like I said earlier, we have corporations and government that are trying all over the little people who are just trying to live their lives. At its core, this is a book about how poverty, when induced by this government or the system, is really the root cause of inequality, regardless of that person's background. Poor is poor. And when you are poor, when you do not have means, and when those means are then taken from you, you are at the bottom of the barrel and you're trod on. And the Jodes and those who are moving to California in the hopes of the American dream, pursuing the American dream, that they're going to get a piece of land, they're going to be able to meet their ends, they're going to be able to have and start families and be comfortable at a minimum. They're not even wanting to be millionaires. They just want to have a comfortable life and be left alone. When that is taken from you, that is just one of the ultimate forms of oppression when it's coming from your government or systems or corporations are involved. The monster isn't men, but it can make men do what it wants. And the monster here are these corporations and the government. And yes, you have these men who are acting on behalf of these systems, these entities, but there's still something bigger that's pulling the strings. They're just the conduit, if you will. If you who own the things people must have could understand this, you might preserve yourself. If you could separate causes from results, if you could know that Paine, Marx, Jefferson, Lenin were results, not causes, you might survive. But that you cannot know. For the quality of owning freezes you forever into I and cuts you off forever from the we. And this was good, for wages went down and prices went up, and prices stayed up. The great owners were glad, and they sent out handbills to bring more people in. And wages went down and prices stayed up. And pretty soon now we'll all have serfs again. The last quote is really a sermon in and of itself. I could just preach. Okay. Is this not in the height of inflation? I mean, inflation is going on worldwide. Many people are living in countries where they're now dealing with inflation that they have not seen. The average person the prices have gone up. Shrinkflation, the prices have gone up, but the sizes have gone down. Gas is at an all-time high. I mean, you go to the grocery store and you're like, what happened, right? It's everywhere. And there are people who are really suffering. And some people were barely making ends meet before inflation. And governments want to sugarcoat it and point the finger. But there is some personal blame that needs to be had. Entities need to take responsibility for certain things. It's very hypocritical because it's not also, they'll often sometimes blame us for stuff that they did. Talk about being gaslit. And these are people, we have the wealthy in the world telling us to cut back, reduce this, reduce that, but they're not giving up their mansions. They're not giving up their jets. They're not suffering from inflation, okay? Because they're so rich, it doesn't matter. They're telling us to reduce this, reduce that, but they're not. Because at the end of the day, most of these people pulling these, who are just out here being shady and corrupt, they don't care about us. They want you to think that they care, but they don't, because it's all a power grab. And in here, it's quite similar. And that's why I'm going into this, because you have these farms or these Now these corporate farms that the Jodes and others are trying to seek employment with, but these corporations are pulling all the strings and giving them nothing for hard work. They just can't make ends meet and saying, oh, well, that's just the way it is. While they're sitting here getting rich and everybody else can barely, make enough money to get a scrap of bread to their lips. I could go on. I'm trying to stay calm. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and it creates this massive divide. So yes, I'm going to say one thing and then I'm going to move on. At least in this country, if, you see this tension between your average citizen, left versus right. I'm going to make an argument. Think about it. I also say left wing, right wing, it's the same bird. When the faces of these political parties can keep us fighting amongst ourselves on ideologies, even though we're all technically in the same boat, your average person is in the same boat, regardless of what your ideology is, for the most part, because we are not the ones who are holding the most. Actually, technically, we should hold the most power as the voters, but that's another conversation in this country anyway. When they can keep us fighting about things, they can make shady moves behind the scenes when we're distracted with other stuff that they created. They know how to put stuff to keep us fighting amongst ourselves. There is fighting amongst the average people in here to survive, when it's really the overarching entities, these entities that really have all the power, that are able to use this tension amongst people for their own gain. I'm going to move forward. I hope that made sense. All right. And then side note, one last thing. Then when they keep you arguing, they can use that as political points. They can use that to advance their own agendas and say, oh, you guys are fighting, I've got the answer, even though they fabricated it. They fabricate the issues, like he was saying. They're the cause. They don't like to see themselves as the cause, but they blame us for the results and say, how dare you rise up against us? These are not the drones you're looking for. All right, I'm ranting. Let's go to the left. Let's come back. We went to the left. Let's come back to the center. Okay, no puns intended. Okay. I've said that. Okay. Steinbeck writes about this as we come back to the book because there is a point in which the common people get mad. There is wrath. That's why this book is named what it is. The great companies did not know that the line between hunger and anger is a thin line, and the anger began to ferment. My favorite quote of the whole book. Let's go. It's a long one, but it's worth it. And the smell of rot fills the country. There is a crime here that goes beyond denunciation. There is a sorrow here that weeping cannot symbolize. The fertile earth, the straight tree rose, the sturdy trunks and the ripe fruit. And children dying of pellagra. Did I pronounce that right? Let's hope so. I don't even know what that is. Probably some type of dysentery. Okay. Must die because a profit cannot be taken from an orange. And coroners must fill in the certificates died of malnutrition because the food must be forced to rot. And in the eyes of the people, this is a failure. And in the eyes of the hungry, there is a growing wrath. In the souls of the people, the grapes of wrath are filling and growing heavy for vintage. My boy J.S. is a poet. Okay. This book is... Let's get into what this book is. Let's wrap it up. Yes, Steinbeck's novels are known to be bleak. This book is heavy. This book is bleak. But it is realistic. It's relatable. And it is profound. It is expertly written and constructed. Steinbeck's command of the English language and American English on top of that is just poetic. I mean, my guy is a rapper. I'm going to put it out there, okay? My guy writes some verses, okay? It is poetry in verse. This book is just, writing doesn't It almost doesn't get better than this, in my opinion. He is unapologetic, as he is in all of his books. And even though the only other book I've read from him is the of Mice and Men, and which I need to reread, but he is just known for knowing how to wield that pen. You know what I'm saying? This is considered one of the great American novels, and I'm not going to dispute that. When it comes to what the core of this novel is about, it is very American. Freedom, 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 freedom. And I know that other countries joke us about how much we talk about freedom and how much we're obsessed with it. But this book really portrays how freedom in striving for freedom is a constant battle, because there are always these entities that will try to oppose that. Also expertly writes about the landscape between Oklahoma and California. And there are just absolutely gorgeous passages about these particular states. And because they're going from Oklahoma, the Jodes are going from Oklahoma to California in a truck. What is more American than a almost cross-country road trip? Even though this is probably like the bleakest road trip ever, but this is a road trip in a lot of ways. And I mean, does it get more American than a cross-country road trip in a truck with all your family and all their stuff? I don't think so. Yes. Once you get, now I will say, the first maybe 100 pages or so were slow reading for me. I had to get used to the colloquial speech here. But once you get into the language and you get used to the speech, this book can fly if you want it to. And that ending, like I said, it sticks with you. This book, yes, massive fan. It really can be analyzed to an oblivion. My friend and I, these are just what we decided to pick out and talk about when we talked about it together. And bold statement. This is probably going to be my top read of the year. Maybe War and Peace will knock it out. Maybe, but I doubt it. And it's going into my top 10 books ever. I loved it. I can't wait. I'm touching my hair too much. I cannot wait to read more Steinbeck. I'm looking forward to reading East of Eden. I think that'll be the next Steinbeck that I read. Phenomenal novel. 5 out of 5. Do yourself a favor. Read it, because my guy has a way with words. And you know me, I like a depressing book, and that book is depressing. And one read is not enough. 2 reads aren't enough. Just to get into the language and the way that he constructed it, and every other chapter. So you get a chapter that's quite short, and he's speaking generally in this third person omniscient voice. In that chapter will tell you what's to come in the next chapter with the Jodes. It is just remarkable. Love it. Chef's kiss. 5 out of 5. I am now a Steinbeck stan. Yes, I am. Let's wrap this up. I would like to know if you're a John Steinbeck fan. Have you read Grapes of Wrath? If you are a fan, what is your favorite novel of him? For a lot of people, it's East of Eden. I've heard that novel is just on another level. And so, yeah, if you read this book, let me know what your thoughts were. Do you like Steinbeck? Some people don't like Steinbeck. That's okay. I'm feeling it. I like it when people don't always like what I like. Keeps things spicy. And are you interested in reading this book? Is it on your TBR? Feel free to like, subscribe, leave me a comment. Follow me on the Instagrams where I get up to more book of shenanigans. And I will see you in the next one. My next book review is good old Daphne du Maurier's Frenchman's Creek. Completely opposite end of the spectrum of this. I will see you in the next one.